Hello everyone and welcome to my oil painting class. And today we continue painting our image of the crashing waves. And now we're going to, with last week we interpreted it in tone. So this is my little design for it from last week. But today we're doing a larger version of it, but in color. And let's still use our tonal shapes and translate it into color. Now I'm using the gray background today, even for the color, because we have lots of coolness within our color choices. So that gray will support it very well. Now on my palette, I have some white, some extra white as well. Um, any of your yellows, lemon yellow, if you have one, or cadmium yellow, or a little bit of ochre one, a tiny bit. Alizarin crimson, deep violet, ultramarine, cerulean blue or cobalt blue or phthalo blue, any of those, emerald green or phthalo green or viridian, again similar color here, and then Payne's gray. Most of the other blacks will be fine as well. Payne's gray got a little bit of blue in it, so that will work well with our range of cool colors today. Right, I'm going to start with doing a sketch, getting our big shapes on our board before we start analyzing colors. So I'm going to sketch with some tips, well, using tips and color. So then my paint, my drawing is not too oily to paint over. Right, so let's use a little bit of ultramarine and some Payne's gray together. So we'll have almost like an indigo. If you have indigo as well, you can use indigo today with some of our blues. And then you can use it just diluted directly. Okay, so let's find our big shapes of the rocks first. Quick reminder, proportions wise. So height wise, if I were to divide my picture into half, this large first, maybe big block of darkness will be almost halfway through. Maybe a little bit. Maybe I should have done it here. Okay, give us that reference. It's not, if that will be a quarter, it's just about reaching out to some of the, in some higher points for towards the quarter of the size of my board. Okay. Now, if you have cut my board to suit the photograph, a bit more elongated format. If your canvas, if you paint in the canvas, obviously you can't quite use the same composition. So perhaps, or extend the sea, maybe bring a bit more water here, or perhaps a little bit crop some of the rocks to suit your layout. Right, so that was my rock coming out somewhere here. Now, where is it in comparison of the width of my picture? Yeah, so approximately halfway through. So I need to make sure it's way within that area as well. So we have enough space for our wave. Okay, so maybe somewhere here. Okay, in that rocky area, that's a quarter again. Just to give us an idea, quarter, so that will be fine somewhere here. Okay. So I'm just putting little pointers to give me a rough shape. Okay, next I want to find how big space we want to keep open for the water to come between the rocks. Let's just make this side a little bit shorter. This is our key area where we've got some beautiful light, some beautiful colors through, and some lovely texture from the beautiful foam. So let's find here as well, height-wise, so that rock is just starting a little bit lower. Okay, maybe somewhere here, and then it just rises up. Try to look out for this space and this space, and make sure that one is much shorter than the other. If you wanted to make the middle even deliberately slightly wider, I think I might have that concept. Then it will be quite good strategic point. You can also move part of that rock out deliberately, so we have more space to see the excitement of the water. I might just deliberately plan it, and if I change my mind, that's okay, but at least I might have that little consideration. Okay. Oops, wrong color, but that's okay. Right, so next. So I'm more interested in proportions of things first. Not interested in the perfect silhouettes. I want to see shapes. Right, so this group of rocks, there are loads of them here. So it might be one rock, might be another one coming out, maybe another one longer deliberately. Again, we don't want them to be all the same in widths. That little extra variety will be more interesting to see. And also perhaps even different widths, height-wise, sorry. Okay. So I might just create a little more of my personal shape here, as I just don't like that scattered area of the rocks. Right, and then we have a corner, bottom left corner. That's quite nice. Little simple shape. And then we have a couple of larger rocks right in the middle. Again, do we want to move them about so they're not? I think that one is quite central. Maybe just deliberately moving it one side. Okay. I'm leaving a tiny bit of extra water for it, so maybe a tiny bit less. So might bring some of that shadow we're working into afterwards. Okay, so that rock doesn't come out from the bottom part of our painting. Okay, so maybe somewhere here. One rock, and then the other one is right behind it, like a little submarine. Lovely elongated shapes to it. If you're using thicker paint, please be aware that the darker color you'll go now, especially if it's thick, it will influence our picture after. We'll have loads of lighter tones on the water, so be careful not to use too dark or thick paint. Maybe dilute it a little more. I don't mind it going a bit more foggy and fade out, but it might be easier for us to paint over it after. Right. Now, last time I've left a little bit of extra white and removed some of the rocks. So feel free to do something similar again. If you enjoyed the composition from last week and you wanted to bring some extra rocks, that would be great as well. I think I might just do a little indent into that area and perhaps also find a tiny bit of extra space for the water to go around. A kind of crashing between the in between the surfaces here. Okay. I'm just looking for some of the gaps, opportunities of light, when it will come to that. Right, and then anything central here. The base here and the base here will meet, and then we'll have the water rising from behind, swelling from behind it. So maybe that edge will need to be a little bit higher. That's it. And then those little group of rocks will just stay here straight away. And then we'll start having a swell of color coming up. So simple shapes of rocks first. You can always tweak their silhouettes with brush strokes, or with even color going, painting it around. So considering some of those indents now as observing it, that's great. I don't have to do them all too precise. My lines are too wide to make those judgments anyway. Okay. Happy there, happy there. Any other rocks coming in front? I've got a slightly bigger board than last week, so because the picture is slightly bigger, I might be able to fit in a couple of extra smaller rocks in this area. We'll see. Again, just put in a small amount will give us that continuation of shapes, but at the same time, we can paint them straight away in color. Right, and then we need a little bit of details for our big wave. So what I'm going to plan for it, just need to double check still that this is a straight line. Okay, if it still dips in, I might just lift this rock a little bit higher, but I need to make sure that stays on one line, because that flatter water gives us that border. Right, so the wave. Let's interpret what we've got on that swell using some of the basic lines and exploring some of the basic form. So the first shape I see is the kind of the whole height of the wave. So that's where we found that big chunk of white. So let's find approximately where we want to have that one. Maybe just over halfway through point from our large height of the rock. Got a little swell here, little descent. There's another little white space going perhaps even slightly higher. Okay, doesn't have to have a continuous one line. There might be different lines. They might not be joining each other perfectly. Okay. Another shape I can see is the base of my wave. So almost gives me kind of comes out from under the rocks, kind of flattens up, and then goes partially down again. I might just make it a tiny bit more shallower. Okay. And then from that base, we'll see the white swell, that crash of the foam. So we'll see that white coming in. And let's find that negative, positive space. Positive of whites, negative of the greens, turquoise. Okay, so that somehow comes out that way. And then we'll have a lovely shape, and I think that one might be just a tiny bit higher as well. Okay. Okay, so we just start breaking it up a little bit. I think my wave is a little bit extra chunky as well, which I'm quite happy to increase it. Yeah, kind of widen up that area a bit more. That height could go just gently for me. Just really want to focus on that exciting color. And then that lovely turn will come in a beautiful, again, wave, just quite roundish shape, and then it somehow goes away. Okay, it's quite a dark line. I should have diluted that color a bit more, but then you can see it a bit better. And then that swell also continues elsewhere. Let me just dilute a tiny bit more. Okay, we start seeing some of the patterns of the foam. Now that little extra shadow, we've identified it as a little extra gray shape. Okay, so I'm almost looking for, if it would have been a stained glass window, how would I break that complex shape into a pattern of light? Okay, I think that eye is almost open in here. Again, another artist, or you might even pick up slightly different shapes as well. Doesn't mean my shapes are the only right shapes. Plus, if they become a tiny bit more confusing, I think I can see where mine are. But if they're becoming too confusing, don't worry. Don't over complicate things. We'll work with color and things will start falling into places. Right, another thing I might identify here, a couple of darker waves in the distance. There's one slightly darker shape here, so I might just get that flatter, very flat swell, and it's almost as if it will be like a big smile. Okay, and then it's not going to stay like a smile, it will blend into the colors, but that's going to be like an extra darker surface for water. Now my paint is so diluted, it's the lines widen up very quickly. And then there's another one somewhere here, so a bit of quite a long shade, long strip of that color, very shallow. Okay, and kind of similar overall darkness for it might be somewhere here. We might stretch some of that color darkness elsewhere, but might not have that more defined shape. So that's okay. And then finally, we have a lovely splash behind our rocks here. Okay. So big shape, approximate width of it. Okay, might even subdivide it into almost like petal or leaf shape. Last week we kind of looked at it as maybe horns, but just be careful. Some of us ended up with very sharp, pointy looking horns, but these are lovely soft splashes of water. So they might give us a resemblance, but let's just make them more splashy than anything else. Right, I'm happy with that. Right, so let's start with our rocks. Right, I can put my turps aside now. Let's get to using our 3 oils mixture now. So I've loaded my brush with some oil, and I'm going to mix some warmer colors for my rocks first, and then I'm going to apply some cooler colors. So I don't need any white yet. I'm gonna go for some crimson, alizarin crimson, and I'm gonna go for some Payne's gray. Okay, nice and runny, not overly runny, so we can have a bit of control, but I want to see more red than black. And let's look for some of that warmth in our rocks. I can see maybe something a little bit on the top, something a little bit more on the bottom. See if you can spot more blues there, blue areas, more warmer areas of reds. They might add a little bit of ochre later on. So what I'd like us to do is just to apply that color quite freely, quite playfully. Okay. I'm not overly worried if I'm not gonna hit the right um, or perfect silhouettes. I just want to put a little bit of color in approximate locations. Feel free to leave some gaps for cooler colors. And again, they don't have to be overly precise. Cool colors can go on top of our warm colors. But as we always know with oils, it's a little bit easier to put fresh color on a dry surface. Right, wrong color. Payne's gray and crimson. Okay. Right, anything else? I think let's have a look at this one, and maybe I can make it a little bit bigger, but definitely not lower. I think I'm happy for it to stay as it is. And then maybe that area will stay with quite a lot of cool colors, except these smaller rocks. And the area close to me, maybe I'll deliberately make this one a bit more warmer. So then that separation will be happening in color as well as some maybe texture afterwards. Okay, keep your colors transparent or transparent as they come. If some of the oil starts separating or start running a little bit, especially if you have your surface quite vertical, which is better for not runny, sorry, not runny, for non-reflective surfaces, but it can run a bit. It's not a big deal. Sometimes opposite, it's quite exciting to have some extra textures from runny surfaces. Right, these rocks, I think they're mainly going to be cool, but I think at the bottom somewhere here, you can just about to see a little warmth. Okay. And perhaps this one will have extra warmth, and I might use a little extra ochre on it afterwards as well, because it has some extra light. Okay. So big blocks of that red and black. Right, and then I'm going to start adding a bit more ultramarine to my Payne's gray. Okay. And let's block the rest of our rocks. In some places I might put a bit more ultramarine, and Payne's gray will be less distinctive. In some places we can make our bluey gray a bit more stained towards the gray. Okay, so just have a little play. These ones very much cooler rocks here. So let's put them maybe more on that cooler ultramarine side. And when we come close to the reds, we can gently smudge it as well. Then we have some connections. Right, and then anything else we haven't quite finished on the other rocks. Okay, maybe a little bit more black for me. Okay, that's what's happening here. Okay, tiny bit more on this lower side, so I missed this little shape as well. Just make sure that this one is not too high up. Let's ground it a little more there. Okay, that's good. Right, I'm going to wipe my brush next. So that was our lovely transparent layer. And next I'm going to add a little bit of opaque color to our rocks. Right, next stage, a little bit more opaque color. So a tiny bit of extra oil, and I'm gonna go for my ochre. Okay, and that ochre has already got some white in it, and it will give us some opaque strokes immediately. Now I had probably a little extra blue on my brush when I've used the same brush. So my ochre started to be a little bit more greenish in color. So I'm gonna come back to my alizarin crimson and just make it a tiny bit more warmer. Okay. And what we're going to do here, I'd like us to have maybe a tiny bit more red. It just looks too strong. Okay. So I'm going to look for a little bit of areas where I might see some light on my rocks and see a little bit of warmth. So for example, in this corner, maybe a little bit more here, maybe on some of the edges, ridges. Some of it might be geologically where it's lighter. Some of it might be just turning towards the side, towards the light differently, towards the sunshine. So let's bring some of that warmth. Okay, if needed, maybe we can put a little bit more color, but I think that might be enough first. So I don't want it to be too light, but I want it to be a little bit opaque. Okay, not quite as light as I wanted, maybe a tiny, tiny hint of white. And back to a little bit more ochre and crimson. Just tiny, tiny bit more opaque. Let's give it another touch. Okay. Yeah, just want to have that extra glow. And don't be scared of just moving your colors about, putting new strokes a little bit more in and seeing how the colors mix in together as well. Okay, this might be some little textures of the rocky form. Okay, maybe more blue will come back there. Okay, maybe tiny little bit of a stroke. Maybe a little catch in the tops. Okay, maybe something here on the ridge again. A little bit. of an extra. Okay. And I also want to put a little, so our rocks becoming nice and colorful. If they become too patchy and too bold in color, we can always tone them down. Right, and next I want to go for a little bit of white. Okay, so this is, we're working into all of our darks. Okay, maybe some of our lighter tones might come up in small quantities towards 5 and 6, but most of the time I want us to see the rocks quite dark. Right, a little bit of white and a little bit of emerald green for next. We'll do tiny bit uh, of highlights with our greens. So we've got opaque color. Okay. And I'm going to work a little extra on my corners of the rocks. Let's see how this gentle green, I think it might be a little bit too light. Let's go for a small amount of emerald green and ultramarine with the white. Yeah, just want it to be more, I don't want it standing out as if it's a white highlight from the water. I want to see maybe a wet surface on the rock, or it might be a little more, that's better, a little ridge. And also I'm going to come back to a couple of my darker blues, blue, and this time with, so ultramarine blue with a tiny bit of white in its mixture with a small amount of emerald green. So I'm looking for some extra darks. Just want to bring them back to some of the shadows here. And going over some of the reds, going over some of the blues, will give you some gorgeous grays. So don't be scared of going over the colors now. I'm looking for some exciting surfaces, or maybe this ochre strokes are a bit too strong, so maybe I'll break them down a little more. There will be less jumping in that light. Okay, tiny bit more darkness here. And maybe a little bit more solid color. So if I'll go for Payne's Gray and more solid ultramarine, and that's fine. A couple of extra darker shadows. Okay, it doesn't come out dark. I think it's quite soft surface with all the oils. That's better. Can use quite happy for us to use crimson and Payne's Gray. This will be a gorgeous connection to color as well, to shadows. Okay, that's a little too dark. Okay, I'm happy with these ones. I'm happy with all of these. Tiny bit of extra darkness. Maybe a little more. Of the range here. And the rocks do look very dark as a unity. We can always touch them up, but still can come back to them and touch them lighter. Let's get a tiny bit more light for. Lost one of the areas here. Might have to go for quite a thick paint to gain maybe part of it back. And what I don't like a thick similar outline for that shape. So can I partially lose it? Yes, I've just done that. Same with this area, don't like that bigger gap of a similar size. Okay, that's a bit better. And tiny bit more highlight maybe above. Okay, it's too greenish, so back to tiny bit of red. Okay, just some sort of light coming through now. In this direction. That's quite nice. Pre-Raphaelites painted their rocks in the most fabulous colors. If you have a chance to see some of their oils of rocks and grasses and how they interpret some of that lovely nature elements. They're fascinating. You step away, you just see a gray group of rocks. You come close and you see most marvelous range of turquoise and emerald greens and blues, and it's really fascinating to explore. So I might just have a little bit of sub textures here. So these rocks becoming a little more richer in color. So what we've done with gray on top of the black rocks, we did little extra highlights. Now we can look into more exciting color. Now, as my picture got loads of dark colors, my camera doesn't pick up as much light yet. So it will, once I start adding more paler highlights in the water, hopefully we'll see a tiny bit more varieties here as well. Okay, right. That might be enough for now. Anything here at all? Okay, maybe for now is enough. Okay. Next, let's have a look at our deeper blues, gorgeous sea colors. Right, next, let's pick up a larger brush so we can start focusing on mixing larger volume of paint and working our tones here. Now, we will be working into the middle kind of darkness. So that gray tells us we need to be somewhere here. Some of the shadows of the waves, the ones we kind of a little bit identified here, they could even dip into some of the sevens, maybe even more. Maybe just need to, maybe not too much. Maybe seven should be enough. But some highlights on top could go towards the threes. Okay, so let's paint it maybe approximately here, and then we can darken it and we can lighten it. Okay, but so tone, that's tone wise. Color-wise, let's start with the basic kind of starting point. So let's have some oil on my big brush. My starting point is going to be cerulean blue, some white. Right, I think I need more oil as my brush is quite big. I've already used most of it. Might be a little too much. I prefer to add more than make my pot mucky and then all of that runny oil is mucky. Right, so cerulean blue, some white, and some emerald green. Okay, it depends how much white we'll put, it depends how much blue and green we'll put. We should be more or less in a similar grayish tone as our board. Okay, I can give it a little sample even here. Okay, maybe a little bit darker, but that's fine. Now, variations of this color could be going towards the blue, towards more cerulean. Okay, now cerulean got quite a lot of white in it. If you're using cobalt blue or Prussian blue or phthalo blue, it will be a darker versions, which will be extra, will be easier for you to make the color slightly darker. I'm going to use, if I want to make my color extra darker, I'm going to use ultramarine. Okay. And of course we can go towards more green side as well. So that might be a little too dark blue anyway for what we need. But that might be some of our shadows. So if I'll place one here just as a little reference point, that would be quite nice. So let's block our areas as big shapes of color. Now, if we were to look at the whole of that unified by gray tone shape, there will be more presence of perhaps blue in here, perhaps more of green in here, okay? And maybe that area will have again more, you have a different type of blue, maybe more of a turquoise, but towards the blue. This definitely got more cooler, calmer, maybe more cerulean in there. So a little subdivision of the groups. Right, so let's have a look. That looks like more of a turquoise, so maybe for the top of the part of the water. We need to go reasonably thick paint. If the paint becomes too transparent, might be harder for us to touch things up after. So reasonably thick. Not huge chunks, but not as runny as we were painting our rocks. Okay, so big blocks with a large brush. And let's go for a little more ultramarine. There's still green present, but that ultramarine might be a little bit stronger. Okay, I'm going to leave a little bit of space for my splashes. They're quite wide here. That's where some wider strokes will go, but it doesn't mean that we can't paint underneath of it, at least partially. So I'm going to shrink it a bit more, remembering that I need to make it bigger. The clean space is quite important when we paint dry brushing strokes. So if you can preserve some of it, that would be fantastic. Doesn't mean that a lot. Okay, so while I'm painting just one block of color, I'm going to try to keep most of my strokes horizontal. Okay, and let's bring the lower part with a little more emerald green. up to that line we've got here. Let's just stay to about here. Okay, and then anything else to fit in. Okay, I just left these ones for a little bit darker colors shortly. Now on my picture, I can see much more stronger color variation. On my screen, I'm not too sure. So I'm going to bring some of the fresh green with some extra white over towards the left-hand side of the painting, maybe the lower part. So I'm kind of mixing it with existing blue there. And I'm partially imitating some of the waves, but I'm just making a bit more of a variety there. And I want to bring this green as well, maybe slightly lighter version of it, tiny bit more for the lower part of the picture here. Now, what I don't want from these strokes is to have too defined shapes yet. I want to have a little bit more of a softer range. Okay. And I'm ready to bring a little more darkness here as well. Right, let's go for some ultramarine with our greens. Ultramarine perhaps a little stronger. And because my fill bit brush, or if you're using a flat brush, got that extra longer edge, I can use some thinner strokes to create little chops of the waves. Okay, so they're not just a little triangle, they're little breaking through points. They're not quite continuing perfectly. They have that imitation of shadow all together. Okay, so it's a little more broken space. Okay. This one I haven't painted. Can I add a little bit more to it? It might be a bit too dark. Just make it a tiny bit paler. Okay. And again, if I'll start with that pointy feel of the wave, can I just chop a little bit around it? Let's build up from a group of smaller strokes, little sub-waves there, yeah? So I'm building it up softly. Can also make that contrast stronger by adding more highlights behind it. So don't rush making the shadows extra dark. Okay, nice and soft first. I'll just add a little hints of something possible, maybe not quite as a group, big group, but maybe just a little extra hints. Okay. Right, we'll come back to this area later on, but that's a good start of color introduction. I would like to work now next on my wave. So ignoring some of the whites, I want to see some of the beautiful turquoise colors. Right, for that, I might just need a slightly cleaner brush, or I quite like the size of this brush. I want to work with some greens, so less blue I'll have on my brush, the better, because we'll also start using a little bit of yellow. Right, so fresh white, a little bit of oil. Okay, so that's quite, I'm just almost cleaning my brush by just using some white and some oil. And that might be a good starting color for me as well. So it's a little bit of that turquoise green, emerald green, hint of color. Okay, right, I'm gonna leave my whites out, but I'm going to look out for some of the big shapes. Right, that will look very white. So that's when we'll need more pigment. Emerald green, alternative. Okay, and let's block this one together. I'm not looking into foam patterns. I just want to see the whole shape together, because there are subtones within that shape as well. If I start kind of central area of it filled up with that color, then the right slope and left slope could have little changes to it. Before I start using any of the yellows, I want to use a little bit of cooler color, so perhaps strong emerald green on one side. Okay, not huge amount, we're just talking about small change. And that's all about our waves, about small changes, subtle. Okay, picking up that color of the rock by accident. Okay, don't be too perfect accurate with our rocks. We're going to be coming back to those areas. Right, I think it's still not dark enough. I might have to use a bit of cerulean here. Okay, tiny bit more darker. Okay, another side, I might start tiny bit with that green and then move more towards the cerulean. I want to have that little extra depth showing. Okay. And maybe tiny bit more on the tip here. Okay, good. I can see some similar colors. Right, I might just top up my white in this area. Like this. I'm gonna keep this white for my foam, and this is going to be my mixing white. Right, let's bring some more turquoise, emerald green, lighter version of it. This side. Okay, just think of it as a block first, and then we'll subdivide it with color, and we can subdivide it with a little more light and dark. So started with that block, and I think I'm gonna go tiny bit more lighter to the top, and tiny bit more lighter to the top here. and tiny bit more darker towards the bottom. So strong emerald green, small amount of cerulean blue, or your lighter blue, just to show that tiny bit of extra depth. And how we can smudge it gently. Okay. And there is a sudden gorgeous, deeper color. And that might just go as strong as I can with cerulean blue and emerald green. Okay, I'm just losing my cerulean blue in this emerald green, so that's better. That's a beautiful deep color. Again, nothing wrong with starting it strong first, and then we can lighten it up. So all of that will come together. And we see that similar darkness somewhere here as well. And then I can make again slightly tiny bit more darker. Somewhere here in the middle, can just see that depth. Yeah. Can see that just tiny bit of that extra depth on the corner. Can just a little bit of that extra. Apologies if it's reflecting. The moment I change the direction of my strokes, they reflect quite differently. Okay, and then I want to put some more light into those shapes as well. So maybe wiping my brush, using a little more fresher white. And that gentle smudge of light. Okay, just breaks down that light in a different way from direction of the strokes. Okay. And then anything in between. Try not to paint anything too dark than the water behind. We still haven't finished our whites at the front, so it will look lighter. But even some of the depths, just be careful not to make it dark. It could stay similar to these areas, but not darker, not as dark as these or anything else darker. So I'm going to connect a little bit of the colors together with perhaps a darker stroke. Okay, and maybe this area as well, just gently darker stroke will come in. I'm still leaving little gaps in between, so when the whites will sit on the dry surface, it's will be less smudgy white. Okay, and let's go for some lighter color as well, bit of white. And this area will have a little more softer. Okay, if it's too pale, just blend it with nearby green. Okay. Right, my strokes are getting too wide. Might be swapping my brush shortly. Okay, that's good. Good, good, good there. Good, good, good here as well. Okay. And then we're going to add a little more yellow. So where some of the greens are gently too dark and gently too strong still, we'll add with a smaller brush some warmer green as well. Right, so I'm going to change the brush to a smaller one, maybe even smaller than that. Let's load it with some white, a little bit of oil. I can pick up my turquoise or my emerald green from the palette. There's plenty there. So I don't have to go to a lot of thick paint of fresh green. Okay, and now I'm going to use small amount of, you've got lemon yellow, that's great. If not, maybe a small amount of cadmium yellow or even just a bit of ochre. Okay. And we only need a small hint of it together with our emerald green. And let's put a small amount of it into our water where some of the highlights are. Okay, I'm just going to merge a little smudge. Okay. Will show us a stronger glow. I want it soft first. It might not just show too much. I think it's showing more as light on my screen, but that yellowish color is becoming much more stronger in glow. Okay, a little awkward corners at the moment. I'm not too worried. I'm more interested into seeing the color connecting. Okay, that's nice. And there might be a little hint of that warmth somewhere here. Right, anything else? A little this back of here. Okay. So it's like a light from behind within our waves. Okay, this one doesn't show much for some reason. Okay, now it's showing quite a lot. Okay. Looks a little bit more of cubist shapes, just broken, a bit solid, a little bit more, some of them more perfect than others. But that will go shortly. Okay. But they're quite key shapes. And how we're going to deal with them. All right, so I can wipe my brush again. Put some color back from my tissue, my palette if I need it later. And I want to see how my white will stand out. How I'm going to start seeing some of the big shapes. So if I use the same brush, I might just gently wash it from the green. I want to use some white, a little bit of oil, and small amount of, a very small amount of ultramarine, just like an off-white. I want the color appearing more or less white against everything else, but I want some fresh white to come in on top. Right, this is quite runny. I don't want it runny. Let's bring some more solid white. Right, and I want to bring this into all of the larger area of white. See how that rock will be on its way as well. So this is the first layer of establishing a big shape of light. So I'm not interested into blending its borders or anything else. Just want to see a little basic. Okay, this one will come crashing that way, so we can come back to that. Quite nice seeing the gray background behind. It shows some of the strokes. Shows a little bit more kind of depth almost without putting an extra color. Okay, can get rid of some of these lines here as well. More thicker paint. Okay, and let's also find some white coming from under the rock. Okay, that's when my white need to go a little bit more chunkier, because more likely I'm gonna do it, if not in one go. It's not going to be a huge volume variety of color. Color will be coming from all our rocks, so going directly with white, the color will be absorbed by everything else. So I want to see that straightish line here first. Okay, so then we can work with it as a starting point. And then it's gonna go gently up and behind our small rocks. So that might be chunky white coming in. I'll come back to chunks of whites after. I just want to see a little bit of borders, how, or a little bit of volumes, how the white sits against our starting points of the greens and the rocks. Okay, that's quite nice. Yeah, so without any of those lovely spider nets, the whites offset this group beautifully. Okay, good. I'm happy with that. Right, let's get rid of some of these gray lines or those gaps. Again, if I'll go fresher white, there's plenty of color. I needed some color here, so it's not going to be just bold white. But in between, my brush will be picking up all sorts of colors. So let's go for a little bit more here. Okay, it might just be appearing more of a line for now. We'll deal with it after. A little bit more solidish white here. It's not gonna come out solid for me because there's lots of turquoise, which is great. And then we can wiggle it all with our exciting foam. Right, I'll put now some stronger white on the border of this wave so I can get rid of that black line there as well. And also will give me a tiny bit more pointy wave top. Okay. Okay, that's okay. So that's quite a basic starting point for it. Right, any other whites? There will be some whites on the bottom here, which will come back once we've done some colors there. I'll just do a tiny bit more on the side here as well, where I can still see some of my blacker, darker lines. And I can gently apply the white and just see how it will hold. I'll do a stroke and I'll come back to my palette to kind of clean my brush and lift fresher paint. That's the key to have contrasts. Otherwise, you'll be constantly moving the same green and making your paint on the brush darker and darker. Okay, so these are very basic, quite thick strokes with which we can deal after. So I'm establishing a little bit of pattern. A little extra whites. Which we can do thicker with a rough brush as well. Can do it with a thinner brush as well. Okay, I'm partially doing it here as it comes. Okay. Good. Right, I'm going to put more solid white on my actual foam now. Okay, maybe some lovely chunks of it in those beautiful strokes. And the color underneath shows just enough subtones in between those whites. Okay, and there is more of a shadow on the side here, but we see a little bit more of that light here. So that corner, that little bit of darkness is quite important. Without it, my white is not going to be a strong white. Maybe a little highlight chunk of it in here as well. Little placements of chunky paint, right? It's getting more contaminated with green. Okay, maybe then I'm ready to wipe it off. Good, so I'm going to stop at that and work with the other colors before I'll finish off the gorgeous playful strokes. We might not need to do many, but these are some of the key directions for our whites. Right, now let's paint the foreground. Let's get some of the lovely blues. I think we'll have some ultramarine and a bit of white and some Payne's gray. Okay, maybe a little extra white. And we'll come back with some whites or highlights for those areas. And just look for some of the shadows. Okay, that might be even darker. I'll start with that darkness for most of this gap. So we have a bit of a shadow in this area for the water. Okay, but next to, kind of under the rock, we see more, even darker area. So I'm just going to increase my blue. Might be partially reflecting of the reflection of the rocks. It might be that extra darkness in there, as it's a bit more clustered area with big dark shapes. Okay, that's good. There will be little highlights, but we'll come back to that after. Right, any other similar darks? I think I might put something here, and then again might put some extra highlights across. And then that choppiness of softer shapes meeting the foam, kind of the water is calming down in this area. Yeah, it might be quite higher raised surface in comparison to the depths behind. This is almost like a little, not a bay, but little sheltered area. Okay, so let's put some of these strokes out. Okay, might just need a tiny bit more thicker paint. Let's use what I have and then mix a little more. Sometimes adding extra oil or turps kind of deceits us that we have more paint. When it doesn't last long, it's also doesn't give us the quality of the paint we want on our surface. So don't be scared of getting more pigment, more paint. Okay, I'm happy with this corner. Right, let's bring a little more of that color in before. Then I can decide if I want to put little rocks here as well or not. A little more. Might just put more of a softer blends and then work my way with the whites around. Okay, not forgetting this corner as well. Let's make it slightly different color and perhaps a hint of violet in it, and then still Payne's grain, still some ultramarine. Okay. And again, I can use small amount of white for some of that corner. Have extra highlights. So I might just leave a little gap there so that where the highlights could come. Good. Right, I'm happy with that. Anything else here? Anything else deeper in tone? I think that should be enough. Anything on this side under the white? Perhaps a little. Okay, that's okay. Right, wiping my brush again. That wiping is very important, taking most of the pigment off and clearing the bristles deeply while it's still dry. Right, I don't need to clean my brush. There's most of the chunks of paint are gone, so I can see the cleaner bristles, but the color on them remains more of a blue. So by using a small amount of oil and coming back to some of the white. I want to get a little bit off-white color first for some of these softer connections for the flatter water. Okay, so then we can, because it's slightly runnier paint, can have more softer blends. Okay, and then I can touch up more fresh whites and have combinations of this lighter color, the brighter one, and we can also have a little more sharpness later. At the moment, this is quite lovely and soft options. Some borders of that foam will have some sharper contrast. Okay, this one, and a bit more here. Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Right, and I'm gonna go for my thicker paint, maybe a small amount of oil, just gently softening that very thick, direct paint. The thick, direct paint will give us beautiful chunks and that lovely, lovely, gooey sculptural strokes. So the small amount of oil is just to gently soften it, not hugely. Right, I'm going to start from somewhere, maybe here, to get some extra fresh white on some of the bare background and immediately topping up my paint. Okay, thinner, wider, dottier. Yeah, how that gap is coming to life. Is it going to be connected? Maybe it's just going to stay as it is. Maybe that little extra sharper white will come further out. Okay, that might be enough. So it kind of reconnects the white with the center area. Right, and I'm going to find a little more definition for this rock. And then stretch that white out to create the effect of light on the border. From time to time, I'll be cleaning my brush instead of just reusing the same white. Don't know if I want to have so much of that blue section, but it does look nice. So let's keep it for now. Right, there is a little splash, perhaps, or just little white behind, maybe more of a, again, reflecting surface. And perhaps tiny stronger white somewhere here. Okay. And there's some small, I don't know, highlights, maybe just a little broken water from that reflective surface right at the front here. So maybe just a little playful just turning my brush one side another. Might be just kind of little, okay, just too precise, bold. More of a line here somehow. Let's soften it. That's better. Okay. Right, and my brush is getting very mucky. There's not much of a white on it. Let's dig a little bit more into the fresh white from my palette, and maybe I'll be topping up my white shortly. So that's thick white again. Let's have a look where it is. Anywhere at the front. If I'll start with a thicker white, I will blend it more into the off-white easier. Okay, so I'm just going to look for those little off-whites. Bit more flatter strokes to imitate that water, that flatter surface. Okay, a little repetitive pattern here for me, so let's get rid of that. And just too many similar width strokes, so prefer to make it bigger. I can always put some darker paint over, but repetition of shapes is not so good. Okay. Right, I'm just going to put a tiny bit more darker paint back to my indigo, mixed from ultramarine and Payne's Grey. If you wanted to use a little bit of violet, that's as good as well. Right, so let's just bring that color a little bit back. Okay, that shape is still looking too repetitive. Okay, it's a bit better. And let's just make it slightly sharper by putting a little hints of maybe sparkle on the water, or a little stronger line, or okay, that's better, but a little less precise. Okay, that was a nicer darker tone, a little less precise softness. Okay, that's quite nice. If I decide to put a rock somewhere here, that's good work as well. But I think that's nice. Good. Right. Let's tweak my rock back here, and a little bit of the rock back here as well. Right, can we put any water over our rocks? Again, well, we're not on a lot of fresh white. There's a little bit of water going on around the rock. I'll go for a small amount of emerald green with my white. I might just find where the water splashed about and then escaping. And a little ziggy-zaggy little a hint of it, and then it might be seeping through. Okay, I've got that perfect little circle here somehow. Okay, that's a bit better. And there might be little splashes of water. I think I might just put a little runny, more invented than what it is in the photo, but I think that's will connect to our splashes shortly. I think I might just follow that little form here. Again, like we paint waterfalls, some of that, just a little extra interpretation of uh, the wet surface. We will make things tiny bit more connected to our waves as well. Right? Good with that. Okay, I'm going through quite a lot of kitchen towels today. A lot of brush wiping. All right, and let's finish the rest of the whites as big groups first. So for our splashes at the back, I'm going to use similar, maybe one of these blues with a little extra white in it, but I don't want it fresh white first. For the inner area here. So I'm using the color to define the silhouette of the rock now. Again, your own shape is totally fine if you wanted to keep what you have or just see what the brush will create. And a little bit of that body before the exciting splash from the rough brush will come there. The same here, a little more of defining the border, defining the cracks in the rock, or not having any, that's fine as well. It's that connection of white. And that's will be quite nice as well, a little bit here. And I can see also some beautiful highlights just coming over on the border. Again, if I do them not in direct white first, the color is almost the kind of surrounding color sits gentler first, and then the white is not going to be sitting on top of the bolder greens. It will sit on that off-white color. Okay, this area is getting now a little block here, ready for a bigger splash as well. Also little lighter, well, shall I say darker light, darker splash first, gives us a hint of a spray even before the dotty small marks will come in. Okay, that just might give a little bit more of the body. To sit on. Okay, so these need to be a little bit more smudged. And just a little bit more. Okay, somewhere there. Okay, and I want that lovely freshness around that area. Great. I'm happy with that. Right, so I've got whites to finish, foam to finish, and little highlights on the water at the back. Right, I'm going to use a smaller brush again, another size smaller. I'm going to start with some highlights on the back of my blues and greens before finishing off my foam. So small amount of oil, some white, and some small amount of ultramarine. So I'm looking for reflecting the color of the sky. So it's like a little preparation for our foam, but it is in a darker version. It's going to look lighter on that surface, but in comparison to our foam, it's going to be lighter, so darker. And also the lines are less precise, more smudgy. So again, gives us a little practice as well. So if I'll start from this corner above my darker wave, that's looking a little bit too light. So let's have slightly darker ultramarine. Okay, so I'm not just doing foam. There might be no foam at all, very little. So I'm looking for reflective surfaces. Okay, that's still, I think it's picking up the white from the base of my brush. So let's wipe the brush off. Okay, let's just lift some of that white off. Okay, and let's have a little group of them gently sitting together, showing some small highlights. Now, sometimes this is easier to do on the drier surface. If you would have given your painting maybe a day or two to settle, so you can touch it up a little easier. But if you work with lighter strokes, very gentle, and also just watch how much paint is on your brush. So clean it as frequently as needed to have that gentle touch, not a huge jump in contrast, so that tone changes very, very little. And we also mix the color because we lift in partial top layer of that green. Okay, so just little chops here. Some of them are better than others. I'm not sure about this one. So if I'm not sure about it, I'll clean my brush, smudge it back. I don't like where it's highlighted some points. I think it's more the thickness of the stroke than actual the light. I think it's just picking it up. Okay. Good. I'm not sure about that peak being so precise. Anything you're not too sure about, it's become too sharp, too streaky, too strong contrast, smudge it. Kind of lift it off with your brush and smudge it back to the existing surface. You'll find it much more calmer immediately. And then just persevere. Okay, another little stroke and kind of let it settle in. I think might be a little bit more of the ultramarine. If you really struggle, give it a couple of days to dry. What we've done is fantastic already, and it will be much easier for us to do it on a slightly dry surface. Now, what I've done here by a little bit of just talking too much, I don't want strong, playful, childlike shapes or waves. I don't know, I don't want things like that, okay? Uh, we want them calmer, we want them a bit more natural, we want them appearing, disappearing. We want gently showing some of those points, but maybe not many. Or then they don't have that consistency, how they don't go very regularly together. Yeah, we don't we want that light reflecting. That's kind of the basis of it. So if I've got a little silly shape, okay, that's maybe too bright. I'll prefer to encourage the chaos of the waves than being too precise with them. Little choppy chaos is better. Okay. And maybe something slightly bigger. I'm just struggling to see in this area. Maybe slightly something lighter as well here. And then there was my wave here as well. Starting with a little more abrupt boldness and then taking it to softness. So by wiping the brush, that's quite nice. There is a little occasional foam you wanted to bring something over. Again, just be careful not to do too much and don't make them too perfect in maybe widths. Okay, it's more of a blob. And I shouldn't be just taking over certain areas. Okay, that was quite nice before. Start being a bit too similar lengths here now. Let's do some finger painting and calm it down. So as these ones, just a little, one is fine, two doesn't look right. Okay, that's a bit calmer. Right, let's have a look at our foam. I'm going to start with some splashes because I want to keep my foam lines to the last, so I'm not overworking it. Right, so my rough brush, I can use any of the hog bristle brushes, whichever you might prefer. Sometimes the bigger they are, the more exciting the strokes are. So I'm going to apply direct white on it. Make it roughened up. Use maybe the palette to have that little rubbing to the side of the brush. And then using it very flatly, let's just do a little test. Also, testing is good on the bigger areas. Yeah, don't be scared of them. You can always come back to those big areas and make them wider. Okay, let's put a little extra fresh white. Okay, that's quite nice. My brush got more paint on it now, more green paint, so it needs wiping before loading with some more fresh white. Okay, maybe that faster moving stroke. Okay, it's gone a little bit wider. So let's support it elsewhere then. Okay, I'm not sure if I like that volume of it. So what I can do, I can use a bit of palette knife, scrape that volume off. Okay, maybe a tiny bit from here as well. Bring my green color back, probably using some existing background color. That's probably will stretch it plenty. If not, we can just reinforce a little more deeper color from the palette and then give it another go. Okay, because practicing on plain palette, when you need to apply it over reasonably thick paint is a little difficult. Right, I might just try another brush as well. I'll go for this one and have those bristles more spread out and maybe drag it the other way. Okay, that's better. Let's just see the whole splash as a okay, that's a bit better now. And a little bit more height to this one. Okay, I'm just picking up a little bit of warmth from my rocks. And maybe a tiny bit more somewhere here. Okay, and as how it's going across, looking at my splash, no longer the splash there, but my splash and the dynamic of it. It feels I could do with something else, maybe this way. That's better. It's kind of calmed it down, balanced it back. Maybe a tiny bit more still here. Okay, that's better. And then seeing what I have on my picture will reinforce extra highlights if there is water running there. Okay. If there is anything there. Okay, I'm happy with that. Right, and then anything around those rocks. Again, borders with the white. Does any fresh white need to come really close? Okay, that's good. Maybe another little gap of white. That's it. That's better. Right, and tweaking the foam lines. Right, so for our foam and extra white lines, Now, first of all, I'm going to have a clean brush and I'm going to smudge in some of my existing white lines. So then you'll have an idea what I'm doing with them. Because at the moment they're quite strong. So just partially kind of going on the side of them will lift and blend them with existing colors. And that gives us much more softer areas immediately. And so we'll make our whites narrower as well, kind of gives us that opportunity to control the volume of white. Look at that. I'm almost, and then I'm constantly cleaning my brush as well. Sorry, I should have said that. So let's go a little bit shorter here. Okay, let's go that way, clean it. Let's just go the other side. Okay, that changes. I've got that volume of the wave is now much more stronger. Okay, maybe a tiny bit more here. So when you will be applying more white, you kind of need to look out of how you're going to smudge it after and not be going, oh, this is a too thick line. Oh, I can't do anything. This is too out of control. So it's control is gained back. Okay, so that's quite nice now as well. So this is a big chunk. So, and if partially it spreads elsewhere and brings some extra pattern, that's great. If not, we'll think of it afterwards. Okay, this is quite chunky here, so let's lift part of it. Okay, maybe even more. And that foam starts forming a little more naturally. And that's all I want you to do. I want you to have a little exploration and you will have a feel for it. How much or how little you smudge back or maybe reintroduce back. This is quite nice, flowing little shape. Okay, these ones just gently back. And if the brush starts being too thick and just brings too much white in, just give it a little cleaning in tips, then come back. And sometimes you bring a darker color towards the whites and kind of shrink it that way. It gives you that depth as well. Right, so I'm much happier with my white lines now. This is a bit more solid still. So let's move that one away to more natural shape and size. Okay, that's good. So the plan is if we were to look more and more into the details, there's a lot of lines. I want us to see that color more than the volume of the whites. So I'd prefer to have 2 lines rather than 15, okay? But that freshness of the white and that transparency by smudging is more important. So let's add a couple of more white lines, for example, here. Okay, so maybe one is going on the side. Okay. So these are reasonably thick whites. Okay, and it might just go up partially another little one somewhere here. So these are starting points whites. Okay, a nice chunky area here. And then I still got a little gap where I haven't painted my background. So that might be a landing point for white as well. Right, anything else here? Maybe a slightly wider stroke. This is a lovely, I quite like it as it is. So I might just bring small amount. Must bring the fresh white, not blended white, not chunky white with other colors, just lovely fresh one, please. Okay, something with my hair, because it will get other colors from the from the painting itself. Okay, this is getting good as well. And perhaps a little more. I think I might need more fresh white shortly as well. And just keep wiping your brush if it's get clustered. This is more control of the brush and control of the clean white stage. Okay, so I might put tiny, quite like this wave, but I think maybe bringing a little extra. Instead of moving the whole width of the white, I might just bring a little extra linear something here. And then I can work with that. Okay, this one. Anything else? Let's just soften this one, what I've got now. So starting from cleaning my brush and then going individually, narrowing shapes down or widening the gaps of the greens. Cleaning my brush every time. So the trick is to have our foam appearing not like I've gone with the same brush everywhere. Yeah, this is the sea. Nobody's been painting it. It's just the volume of light, the volume of water. So if we see repetitive brush lines, it looks unnatural. Okay, good. Let's see anything else here. That's quite nice. I'm quite happy with this now. Even if in its simplified form. Let's just work, and I'm really squeezing the bristles, really persevering, giving that paint removed from the bristles. Makes a massive difference. Okay, just moved some extra lovely white, so let's put it back here. Okay, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4 marks. So let's all widen the area or narrow it down so that that is not going to look too man-made. Okay, again, that's better. I haven't quite looked around my rocks here. I think that's just about fine. Right, anything else here? These are looking quite similar linear widths. So let's change them. Constantly wiping my brushes. More of a game here. As one area moves to another, to another, to another. Okay, I also don't want too repetitive streaks. Okay, that's better. Yeah, I'm happy with some of this here. That's all good. I'll just touch tiny bit more here. It's more of an imitation of volume of white. That's the white stroke, so let's get rid of some of that. Right, and perhaps just this corner as well. And then partially softening the movement here. That's quite nice as well. Can always bring that extra deeper color from underneath if we just a little bit overpainted our foam. That's nothing wrong with touching up gently. I did like that. Oh, that's maybe a bit too dark. Okay, but just gives that beautiful transparency again. Okay, good. Anything else? Anything else? Might let it dry and then see if tiny bit of highlights might need to come up at the back. I think I'm quite happy with my foam now. If I do more, I think it might just start taking the freshness of the greens too far. Right, so this one already. Might just need to be stopping. Okay, that's there. Back tiny hints of that depth. Okay, it's gone to blue. Sorry, to green. But with the oils, we can come back at any point for more depth or for more highlights. I'm pleased with that main point. So if I were to look at anything else later, that will be fine. I'm also considering maybe a couple of more darker rocks, maybe again in a day or two, as the painting settles down. But that major structure of order of paints of what we're doing, order of layering, and how to approach the whites is there. So keep on going when you've got the chance. And I look forward to seeing your paintings. Thank you very much.